So on Friday, on Erev Shabbos, we finished up the sugya of whether or not the person who's being made for the nether, whether it be the father, whether it be the husband, whether it be them both in conjunction with each other, do they have to hear the nether? The Gemara ended up bringing a raya. The Gemara remained without resolving the shaila, but the Rishonim say that since Rami Bar Chama shaila was imtim tzaloimar, that you don't have to hear the nether, what would be a halacha by a cherish? And the Gemara said, and the Gemara says that a cherish would not be able to be made for a nether. The Gemara brought a brisa, the Shama Isha Prat La'eshes Cherish Mamino. So the Rishonim conclude, the Ran concludes that since we only were poshet the shaila regarding a cherish, and the whole shaila was that intim saloimar, that about we made for Shmir, we go basar intim saloimar. That was one raya. The other raya the Ran brings is the original raya we had from the Mishnah. The case of the Mishnah is the father and the husband tell the kala before she goes to the zuin, any Nedarim that you have, I'll give you bottle. So the Gemara originally brought a raya from that, you don't have to hear it. So the Gemara was matcha, maybe it means that when they hear it, they'll be made for it then. But that's a shikul doichik. The Pashtus of the Mishnah, in fact, does say that the person being made for it does not have to hear the nether. And that's why the Ran says we're going to rely on that lamaskana. So that was the end of that sugya. Then the Gemara discussed if someone could be made for two Nedarim from two different wives at the same time. The reason why there was a shaila, because it says Yoni Oisa. Oisa has a mashmois, a connotation of singular form. The Gemara tried to bring a raya from a machloik, or what seemed to be a machloikis, whether you could be mashka two saitis together. The first sheet says you cannot, because they shaliba gas b'chavrita. If you have to divide and conquer, if there's two women that are going through the process side by side, if one woman is innocent, she'll make all those shvuas. The other woman might be encouraged by her and falsely swear. So better keep them separated. Rabbi Yehuda said there's a pasuk. So at first glance, you might think that the Tanakama holds it's a svara, not a pasuk, which means you cannot extract from the pasuk that it's one at a time. But the Ran tells us, in fact, that's not true. In fact, the Tanakama agrees with Rabbi Yehuda that the reason is because of the pasuk of Hishka. So therefore, Oisa is dafka, you can't be made for two Nedarim together. The Tanakama is Rabbi Shimon who explains the pasuk. He's darshin in time of the Kra. The reason why the Torah tells us that you cannot be mashka two saitis together is because the Torah doesn't want one to be gas b'chavrita, because she sees her chavrita getting away with it, and that's why the Torah said in the pasuk the Hishka, one of them. Then on Amud Beis we discussed the machloikis as to whether or not, in order for a woman to be a nesua and for the husband to be solely responsible to be made for a nedarim, does that depend on her actually being a nesua, or even if she's not a nesua yet, but she's at the point where her husband has to fully support her? For instance, if it's 12 months since she's an arusa, or if she's a boigris 30 days, or if she's an almana 30 days, that point the husband has to support her. Do you say that he can be made for nedarim? And we had a machlokes in our Mishnah, if yes or no. The Gemara compared it to a similar machlokes if at that point where the husband has to support his wife, if he's a kohen and she's not, can he give her truma? Midaraisa, an arusa can eat truma, if her husband's a kohen, of course. But midarabanan, we're geyser, because he might find when he makes nesuin that she's not exactly what he expected to have. We learned you're not allowed to lie about weights and measures. If it turns out that the shadchan lied about weights and sizes, she's a 12 instead of a 2, she's 180 pounds instead of 90 pounds, that could cause a little bit of an issue. That's not really true, it's really b'dikas pnim, but I'm just kidding around. So because there could be a mekach tos, which would mean that she was never really married to him, and the truma that she would have eaten would have been truma that a Yisrael is not allowed to eat. So the Gemara wants to say maybe these two shilas are totally zeh. If you hold that the chiv mezonis is enough to be made for nedarim, you'd also hold that the chiv mezonis is enough that we would feed her truma. The Gemara says there are really two separate shilas. One has nothing to do with the other. First of all, the question of truma is only midrabanan, whether or not your geyser, mishum simpoin, do you say that he could check her out enough even before the suin or not? That has no bearing whatsoever on the shaila of whether or not she's technically being mevatler das to him because of her pinchas svara of kol hanaderes al das by the hanaderes. The two independent shailas, they have nothing to do with each other. What we extracted from there is the way the Ran understood it. The Ran quoted from other Rishonim who say that it's not only with a wife and a husband. Any person who says I'm noider al das ploini, I'm making a neder al das shloimi, and shloimi says he doesn't like another, it's not a neder. Dr. Ran, that's a terrible, terrible mistake, because of course if I'm noider al das you, it doesn't mean anything at all. All Rav Pinchas is saying is the reason why the Torah allows you to make a farah is because a woman is noider al das her husband. You still need the chiddush of the hafara of the Torah that hafara works, but it doesn't work with a stranger. Now, if I made a tanai, I'm making another almanas that shloimi is maskim. That's a different story. But without using a tanai, just aldas, that's only something that works with hafara. That's not a new way of being able to give somebody else responsibility for your nedarim. And that took us to the end of Erev Shabbos, which now allows us to start today's daf. Shomeres Yavom. This is going to be a mini chazorah of Maseches Yevamos, and we're going to all surprise ourselves as how much we actually remember from Yevamos. We remember a lot more than we think. Shomeres Yavom. I wonder if the Tanoim like cackled when they put these Mishnayos in place, like wondering if we're going to remember what was going on in Yevamos. But we'll see. Shomeres Yavom.
You don't think it was the printer?
No, the Tanoim wrote the Mishnayos, and Rebbe put them in a specific order. So this is directly from Rebbe. Shomeres Yavom. The printer, what he did for us was, just in case we didn't remember, he put the Marim Mekaymis on the side so we could cheat. Shomeres Yavom, bein liyavam echad, bein l'shnei yavam. Rachman l'tzlan, a woman loses her husband. She was on a rusa to her husband, and her husband died. And he has two brothers. Either he has one brother or two brothers. Rabbi Lazar Miyafer, the brother who's the Yavam, could be made for her in the Nedarim. Now, of course, if she's only an arusa, the brother could be made for his part, but of course there's the father's part. The Gemara is going to actually be medayik from the word Yofer that it means he himself could be made for without the father. How do I know that she's an arusa? Oh, because because I learned the Gemara already. Yeah, I learned the Gemara already. It comes out that she's an arusa. Okay, Rabbi Yeshua Aimer. I mean, there was a point where the Gemara could have thought it was Nasul, but the Maskana is going to be that she was an Arusa. But no, I have no raya at this point that that's the case. Rabbi Yeshua says, La'echad, if there's only one Yavam, yeah, then he could be made for, because he's for sure the one who's in charge. But if there's two Yavamin, like how could you know who's going to be the right one? Right? So therefore, no one can be made for. Rabbi Kiva says, I disagree with everything. A Yavam could never do any afar at all. There's no such thing. Amar Rebbe Lozer. The Mishnah is going to elaborate a little bit on the conversation that Rebbe Lozer had, and Rebbe Kiva and Rebbe Shua. It's going to elaborate a little bit on this conversation. And in the Gemara, we're actually quote two brises that further elaborate on the conversation that happened to discuss this issue. Amar Rebbe Lozer. Ma im isha shekanahu la'atman. Madich, if you created a man-made relationship with a woman by going over to a single woman and telling her, you were Mekadesh a lady. But that's a man-made Kedushin. Nevertheless, it has such strength, Harehu, made for Nedarim. He's made for Nedarim. So already we have a little bit of a hint. Shekona, Kinyan is Kedushin, not Nesuin. So if you make a man-made Kinyan on a woman, you could be made for Nedarim. So Isha shehiknu lem in Hashemayim. Nesuin is not a kinyan. It's not. There is no kinyan in that. You don't give her a ring to be kinyan, right? You're just taking her in. It's actually not a kinyan. But Isha shehiknu loy min Hashemayim, a woman who you have a kinyan from Hashem, that's a much more powerful kinyan than a man-made kinyan. Like everybody knows who goes skiing, man-made snow works, but it doesn't come to real snow. So you have a real kinyan in Hashemayim. Eino did sheyafar Nedarim. Surely you should be able to be made for Nedarim. So that was Rabbi Elazar's right. Amalei Rabbi Kiva. Rabbi Kiva said, Rabbi Elazar, very nice, but it's not going to work. Lo yim amrit be'isha shekanahu la'atzmai she'ein la'acherim barashus. If you make a kedusha for a woman, sure, it's man-made. But guess what? Nobody has a relationship with anymore. It's an exclusive relationship between you and her. As a matter of fact, if somebody else has relations with her, he'll be chayiv skila, tanayir marasa, right? Toimar be'isha. So are you going to argue and extend that same strength that a husband has over his wife? If there's two Yavomim, yeah, you might have a connection to her midaraisa. The Torah gave you a connection, but guess what? Your brother has that same connection. There's no exclusivity there. That's not enough to give you the koyach to be made for Nedarim. So I'm going to be sure. Rabbi Yosy said, Rabbi Kiva, I like your svara. Very good. No, I'm sorry. That's right. But his taina was only against Shnayim. So Rabbi Yosy told him, Akiva, I love your pshat. I'm asking Rabbi Elazar is wrong. But your svara actually supports me. This is also an exclusive relationship. Amar Loi. So Rabbi Yehuda told him, or Rabbi Kiva told him, Ein hayavama gemur liyavim kishem shaharusa gemur leisha. You cannot compare the two relationships. The relationship of an arusa is much stronger than the relationship of a yavama. This at this point is not clarified. I'm going to spill the beans. The end of the Gemara that we're going to learn today is going to tell us what Rabbi Kiva was saying is an arusa who is mizana is chayiv skila. A naira hamurasa is mizana gets skila. But a naira who is a Shomeres Yavom, who's mizana, it's nothing more than a lav. So, Zok Rabbi Kiva, you can bring all your kal v'chomer in the world, a man-made versus a Torah-made, all fine and well. At the end of the day, an arusa, which is a relationship that you made with the Adam, that gives you skila. That's a serious matter.
How did Yehuda have the right to put her to death if it's only a lav? Yehuda
put Tamar to death.
She was a Shomeres Yavom.
Before the Torah was around, I don't know how the rules worked in those days.
So they were worse than they are after the Torah?
I guess in some respect there was. Yeah, like we know a Ben Noach who's over any one of the Sheva Mitzvahs Ben Noach is Chayiv Misa. Every one of the Sheva Mitzvahs Ben Noach is Chayiv Misa.
Yehuda also had precedent. Wasn't Shechem also Chayiv Misa? Or Shechem was Chayiv Misa because of what he did, and he wouldn't be Chayiv Misa.
She was a Pnuya. She was a Pnuya.
And she was a Pnuya, so for sure she wouldn't be Chayiv, but they were makabel on themselves not to be for Arias.
Yeah, but they were Chayiv Misa. The whole town was Chayiv Misa because they didn't have any justice. There wasn't any Bezdin that held them responsible.
But not having justice is also one of the Shiva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach. There's a Misa for it. If a Yid doesn't have court systems, if a Yid doesn't have Batei Dinim, no one's Chayiv Misa for that. B'nai Noach are judged much more harshly on their Sheva Mitzvahs.
You know, this case, and I don't want to get down into the weeds over here, but the case in Shechem was much different. If you look at the cause of the Mabul, the example in the Torah was that the Bnei Elohim, I'll say, took anyone who they wanted, right? In the very next pasuk, it says that the Rebbeinu Shalom is going to make the Mabul. Okay, so there's a connection between this kind of avera, okay, and destruction of a whole peoples. So I don't think it's apples and oranges. So this particular case, they were Mechayiv Misa because it was really a heinous crime. It's like it's a Hefkervelt. You can take anyone off the street and have your way with them. Okay, that was not tolerable by the Rebbeinu Shalom. So that was the precedent there. Now here we have an avera that Yehuda claimed it's Chayiv Misa, and we're saying it's only a lav. That's
It's
a little weird, isn't it? You wouldn't admit that there's an issue here.
I hear. I guess we're coming up to that. The Parshas will know. No, we passed it already. We passed
We
it.
passed it. We passed
Oh,
it.
hey, I can't wait another year till we get done.
You
with
missed it.
that.
All right, anyway, I made my point.
It's a good horror. Okay, so let's see the Gemara. Zok the Gemara. Bishlam or Rabbi Kiva. I can appreciate Rabbi Kiva's position, why he holds that the relationship between a Shomeres Yavom and the Yavom is not quite enough to give him the right to be made for an Nedarim, because he holds Ein Zika. The relationship.
Just before you go, I'm sorry, I was trying to get through. What about why can't you just say because he could do chalitza? And why do you have to come on to about his door and all that kind of thing? Why don't you just say because there's the possibility, even if it's a Shomer Shaman to one person, he could do zika. I mean, he could do chalitza.
Well, so when you marry a woman, you can give her again. You can also end the relationship.
But chalitza means you never really started the relationship. So how could you be made for her?
Zika creates a relationship. Chalitza discharges that relationship, just like a get would discharge a marriage.
Is that a strong enough relationship to be made for a neder? The fact that you're not going to, they could give chalitza?
That's precisely this. That's what we're discussing. Rabbi Kiva holds not, but Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Eliezer hold yes.
Okay.
Zok Gemara, if Rabbi Yeshua savar yeshika, and Rabbi Yeshua would hold that there is zika. Let's see if we could see what the zika means. Now, this run was designed to give us some aerobic exercises. Because actually, Akiva here I'll concede that it's the printer who wants to give us aerobic exercises. Because the Ran and this Gemara is on Amud Beis. So let's have a quick look at what Yesh Zika means. Oh, I apologize. No, I'm wrong. It's still on this page. I apologize. I'm now giving you this extra exercise. So Bishlam Rabbi Akiva Ksavar Ein Zika. What does that mean? Shayavama Zukuka Liyavim. This relationship that Yavom has to the Yavom, loy alima ke'erison. It's not as strong as erison. Again, Mati, you see the reference to erison. It's not as strong as erison, umishum hachi loy mati mefer. That's why you can't be mefer, because it's not as strong as an erison. Rabbi Yeshua saber yesika, the adarabba alima tfei erison. Never mind, like erison, the relationship of a zika is even stronger than the erison. The havik k'knusa, she's considered like she's already in a suah. Umishum hachi, Yofer Yovem Lechudei. At this point in the Gemara, that's not going to be the Maskana. The Gemara thinks that the Yovem could be made for independent of the father because we consider her Keknusa. The Hashta Harichas Al Kedaita. That's what the Gemara thinks at this point. Mio, the Gemara is going to say, Ein Breira. Most Rishonim learned that this is not the Breira that we're referring to, is not the real Breira. We're just saying if there's two Yovems, neither one could make hafara, because who is the one with the real relationship? The Shnei Yavamin ein breira lemihi zakuka ulemi tila isha. We don't know who he's going to eventually marry and who has a real relationship. They both have a relationship right now. Right now, either one could marry her. Umishum hachi afilu shneim ein yechayim yehofer. And therefore, even if they both are mefer, so no matter what, they covered their bases. The hafara wouldn't work. And the Ran tells us a chiddush here that I didn't know until now. The kivan de b'shas haparosa ein borer lonu mihu isha. Since at the time of the hafara, when they're both making the hafara, we don't know really who's the real one who's making the hafara. Ein hafarosan klum. The hafara is useless. The Rachmana Amar isha yikimenu v'isha yifirenu the ba'inon sheyeh yadua b'shas hafara. This is a chiddush that the Ran tells us that I've never seen in the Gemara, that it has to be known at the time of the hafara who the real mefer is. And it's not enough that regardless, you've covered all of your bases. Okay, and Rabbi Yeshua holds yeshika. So here, the Ran changed a little bit. Lav l'meimar, the lahavik knusa. The yeshika doesn't necessarily make her like she's in a suah, and she could be made for independent of the av. Elo the have a karusa who made for b'shutfus. The aris can only be made for with the father. The avagav the berei shachsu yusfirlon the offer lichudei kamar kedemukla kaman. Even though at the beginning of the sugya at this point we still think it's like a nesua, the maskana is going to be not like that. Hachi tarech. This is what the Gemara is asking. Yishlama Rabbi Yeshua ika lekiyuma milsa the neymar the mefer b'shutfus kamar. According to Rabbi Yeshua, you can say that he's mefer b'shutfus with the father. the Yeshika ucharusa chashiva, as least as like on a rusa. El Rabbi Eliezer, who holds that when there's two Yavomim, they could also be made for my time. How could you possibly explain Rabbi Eliezer? Inami svir leyesh zika, the havakarusa, or even kenesua, if you hold this yesh zika, afilu hachi lishnei Yavomim loisagi dein brera. You don't have clarity who is the real maker here. And the ein zika, well then afilu chadam eloyov. So Mimanashik Rabbi Eliezer is problematic. How are we going to understand Rabbi Eliezer? That's what the Gemara says. Rabbi Eliezer, my timer. Even if he holds Yeshika, Ein Brera, we don't have clarity as to who is the maker. And from the Pasuk of Yishayifirenu, the Ran tells us you have to have clarity. So Amar Rabami is going to be the celebrity today. The rest of the Gemara is going to discuss Rabami. Amar Rabami, Kegoyin Sha'asa B'Maimer. So let's remind us of what Mimer is. Midai Raisa, there's only two actions that you can take when there's a Yavama here. Either Yibum, which is a Bia, which makes her 100% your wife, or Chalitza, which breaks the Zika, and now she's free to marry anyone who she wants. Midai Abanon, there's two more courses of actions that they introduced. Mimer and Get. The Chazal said that if you write a Yavama a Get, no one could make Yibum on her anymore. So let's say there's two or three brothers that could make Yibum, and one of the brothers wrote her a get, no one can make Yibum anymore. They have to make Chalitza still, because there's still a Zika, but Midrabanan, once someone writes her a get, no one's allowed to make Yibum anymore. On the flip side, if one of them make Mimer, which means he was Makadasher, Kedushin is not one of the actions that you could take with a Yibum, but Midraisa. But if one of them makes Kedushin, it has an impact. We're going to see what level of impact it has, and we're soon going to see it does have the Raisidical level of impact. But what Rabbi Elazar is saying here is that I say when there's two Yavam, they can be made for. Of course, I don't mean that both of them can be made for. I mean if one of them did Mimer, that one would be the designate, and he would be able to be made for, even though he had not yet done Yibum. He just made a Rabbanandike Kedushin. Why is that? How does this work? What does it change? Rabbi Eliezer Savalok by Shammai. Rabbi Eliezer can hold by Shammai. The Omri Maimer Koina Kinyan Gomer. Maimer is a true Kinyan. What is the litmus test? If Maimer is a true Kinyan or not? Let's turn over to Ramah Beis and see what the litmus test of Kinyan Gomer is. Omar Abami on the first skinny line. To go into also by Maimer, meaning Shenosan Kedushin. The Kedusha Yavom Hachi Miklu. The word we use to describe Kedushin of a Yavom is Maimer. What does Maimer Koine Kinyan Gomer mean? The Lahavalo Kiknusa Umatipatalo Begita Voloboy Chalitza. So this is already getting into the Deraisa. Once you make Maimer, it's considered her wife, even with Deraisa. And now, if he wants to get rid of her, he no longer does her Chalitza, he gives her a get. The mechanics is that when he makes Maimer, it destroys the Yibum relationship and creates a new Arusa relationship. So she's a regular woman who's an Arusa. She's no longer a Shomeres Yavam. It destroys the Zika and it takes it into a new plane. And now it's a regular lady who's Mikudeshes. I'm sorry? He does not. That is the Chiddush. If you hold Maimer, Koine, Kinyan, Gomer, once one makes Maimer, no Chalitz is required by anybody. If you want to get rid of her, he gives her a get. And the other guy's out of the picture. So since it's a Kinyan Gomer, and it really makes the other guy out of the picture, and as if she's a Rusa to him, naturally it makes sense that this husband who made the Maimer could be made for. Therefore, he can be made for by himself. Now, this is a very interesting point of what this Maimer does. So let's think about this. This Maimer breaks the Zika. She's no longer a Shomeres Yavam. Now she's a regular Arusa, right? So let me ask you a question. What if he made Bia on her? She would not become a Nesua, unless you hold Bia as Nesuan. But if you hold Nesuan means bringing her into the chuppah, or bringing her into your house, or going into a yichud room, because there's a big shiloh amongst Rishonim, what actually constitutes Nesuan. It's a five-way machlokes. We do all five of them. One of them is she comes under the chuppah. We do that. One of them, she's biyachad with him. We do that. One of them is she sits with him together in front of a crowd. They sit together by the table in front of the whole crowd. And I forgot what the other two are, but there's 5 different shitas. I'm not sure. I'm not that confident, but I'll call upon him. If you hold it's one of the other things, even Bia won't make her Nesua. My shaking, if she was a Yavama and you were boiler, she's 100% your wife. So Maimer Koine Kinyan Gomer means it breaks the Zika, and now she's a regular Arusa. So now it makes perfect sense if you hold Maimer Koine Kinyan Gomer, why Rabbi Eliezer agrees that even if there's 2 Yavamin, if one made Maimer, he now could be made for. Zok to Gemara, Rabbi Yeshua Aimelach, and Rabbi Yeshua will tell you, when do you say that the husband could be made for Hanamili Bichad Yavim? Al Shnei Yavamin Loy, or 2 Yavamin not. And I'll prove it to you. Because even though you hold Maimer, Koine Kinyan Gomer, everybody agrees that what if the other brother illegally lived with this woman or gave her a get? It would mess it up. So, straight to Yeshua, if this Maimer is such a Kinyan Gomer that it makes it exactly like its wife, Mi Kamidi, did you ever see a real wife? Did you ever see a guy who's married to a woman, and if his brother came along and gave her a get, it would answer this woman to her husband, and he still could be Mefer? In other words, clearly this Maimer relationship is hardly strong enough to be considered like a real Arusa. So that's why Rabbi Shua disagrees. The Rabbi Kiva, he holds even if there's only one woman, Sover and Zika. Wow. This is emes and Mesiris Nefesh. Wow, for them, Upstein. Wow.
It's so noisy now.
Rabbi Kiva Sover and Zika. Rabbi Kiva holds the law, you don't say Zika at all. And therefore, a Shomeres Yavom, even if it's a single Shomeres Yavom, even if there's only one Yavom, you still have the right, you still do not have the right to be made. Frank the Gemara, you know, in Yavamas over there's a Shiloh what Beishama means. We're working under the assumption, how do we understand the Tana Rabbi Eliezer? With the assumption that Beishama holds Maimer Koine Kinyan Gomer. But not everybody learns shot like that in Beishama. And if that's the case, if Maimer is not Koine Kinyan Gomer, how are we going to understand the Shita of Rabbi Eliezer in our Mishnah? To Ulu Rabbi Elazar, according to the Amoyer Rabbi Elazar, so the gears has changed here. According to the Amoyer Rabbi Elazar, the Omar Maimer, Livai Shammai, Ein Koine, Ela Litchos B'tzara. It's not a Kinyan Gomer, it's only a Kinyan Lagabe, Litchos B'tzara, which we'll get to in a minute. Ma'ikala Meimar. How are you going to explain Rabbi Eliezer? According to the first Shita, if you hold that the Maimer is a Kinyan Gomer, and you hold it's a real Erison, okay, now I understand why Rabbi Eliezer might say that even if there's 2 Yavam, the Maimer designates one, and he can be Mefer. But if you hold it doesn't do that, if you hold it even after the Maimer, you still need Chalitza. So if that's the case, how could you possibly explain Rabbi Eliezer? Zok to Gemara, Hacha b'maya skinan, will have to say that the case was the only way you could possibly explain why even if there's 2 Yavamin, one of them becomes exclusive and one of them can be made for Nedarim is Kegoyin Shamad Bidin. One of these 2 Yavamin was cornered in Bezdin because he was delaying and he wasn't acting on this Zika. And they forced him, from now on, you have to support this woman. And once he's under mandate to support this woman, we have Rav Pinchas's halacha that we actually had at the bottom of Ein Gimel base. So there's a lot of things flying up in the air. First, let's get a clarity on what Rabbi Elazar holds and why, because of that, we cannot explain Rabbi Eliezer as to why the Maimer would help. So let's have a peek in the Rab. Ula Rabbi Elazar, the Omar, the Perik Dalarachin, Maimer lebeshamai eina koina elalitchus b'tzara. So earlier we said if Maimer is koina kinyan gomer, it's a perfect kinyan, and no longer will chalitza be required. You only need a get. Rabbi Elazar says no, there's no such thing. Maimer is only midrabanan. All it does is it doesn't let anybody else marry her. That's all it does. But of course, if you want to get rid of her, he'll have to give her a get. But of course, you have to give her chalitza. So what does it mean litchos b'tzara? So we had a very beautiful case. This is a case that we should all remember. There was Reuven. I'm very good at mixing up names and numbers, so I'm going to try to get this straight. Because I remember when I said it And Yavom, I got so confused, I didn't know what hit me. So now we'll get it clear. You have Reuven, Shimon, and Levi. There are three brothers. And Reuven and Shimon were married to two sisters. I always mix up who should Reuven be married to. So Reuven really should be married to the older sister, Leah. But I always get mixed up if Reuven's married to Rachel or to Leah. So I'm going to take tonight, and don't forget to remind me if I get confused. Reuven will be married to Rachel, and even though she's married to Leah, but Rachel is always first in the pair. So Reuven's married to Rachel, and David smiling because he remembers when I got confused. Reuven's married to Rachel, and Shimon's married to Leah, and Levi's a free man. He's single. He's having a party. And neither of them had children. Reuven dies. Rachel now falls to Yibum. Does she fall to Yibum to Shimon? No, because Shimon's married to her sister. It's a Chayis Kukosai. So who does she fall to Yibum? She falls to Yibum to Levi. Levi's a free agent, right? Now, what happens if after she fell to Yibum to Levi didn't make Yibum yet? She's still a Shomeres Yavom. Rachman Lotzon if Shimon dies. Now Leah falls to Yibum. So now he has two sisters that are following to Yibum at one time. Each one is a Chayis Kukosai. He doesn't make Yibum or Chalitz on anybody, right? What happens if he made Maimon? So first Reuben died, and Rachel fell to him to Yibum, and he made Maimer on Rachel. Then Shimon died. Then the halach is Litchos B'tzara. That Maimer helps. Maimer says that the woman he made Maimer on, that's his wife. He could go on and make Yibum on her, and Shimon's almana, who is Leah, is a Chayis Kukasoi, and therefore she's also to him. A Chayis Ishtar. So be a Chayis Ishtar, and she'll be also. So that's the only way Maimer helps. But Maimer doesn't really create a real kingdom. So now let's see the right inside. Kidetan Hosam. Mati smiling because you remember this case from the Nedarim. From Yavom.
Saying that Maimer over here is considered a kingdom.
Well, there's a machlokes if you hold Kidyu Gomer or not. So according to Rabbi Lazar, who held Maimer doesn't create a Kidyu Gomer, meaning after Maimer you still need Chalitza. So how is he going to explain Rabbi Lazar? How could, if Maimer is a Kidyu Gomer, then I could hear if he did Maimer, he could be made for a Nedarim. But if Maimer doesn't really do anything, how could Rabbi Lazar say that would allow him to be made for a Nedarim? So what is the case? Shloisha Achim. There were three brothers, Reuben, Shimon, and Levi. Beis Nesu Shtei Achayos. Reuben and Shimon were married to Rachel and Leah. The Echad Mutna, and Levi was single. Umeis Echad Mibalei HaChayos. Reuben died, leaving Rachel as an almana. V'asaba Mufna Maimer, and Levi made Maimer on Rachel. And then Umeis Achav Hasheni, now Shimon died, and now Leah is following him to Yibum. The Shamei Omer Ishta Imad, the woman he made Maimer on Rachel stays with Levi. V'halazu, and Leah, the second almana of Shimon, Teitze Mishum HaChaysisha, she doesn't require anything because she's a Chaysisha. The Hainu Dika Amar of Elazar, Litchos B'tzara. The only thing Maimer works for is in this case to push away her tzara, and he could remain married to Rachel. Kloimer Litchos is a Chaysa, Shaloy Te'esarna. She will not answer his wife Rachel, who he made Maimer on. Why? Mishum HaChays Kuka. The Maimer Avad Lo Keknusali Inzeh. Maimer does enough that is connected enough to Rachel that now Leah won't be able to answer him on Rachel anymore. It's not a real kinyan. Unlike the first shita, if he wants to divorce her, it gets not enough. He has to give her chalitz as well. So therefore, according to that shita, how could Rabbi Eliezer hold? How could the Tana Rabbi Eliezer hold that you could be made for even like kanla kinyan gomer? So the problem is every Amoira has to be able to explain every Tana. No Amoira can argue. So how could this Amoira understand the Shita of Rebbe Eliezer? That is our problem. And for the Gemara, Hacha b'may askinon kigoyin she'omad b'din ubarach. So before we go through this ram, it could be confused. What do you mean she was omad b'din? So does that mean we're aborting what Rabami said that there was a mimer? Because all we're looking is we have two Yavomim. We're looking to crystallize the relationship with the Yavama and one of these Yavamim so that he's her Baal, so that he could be made for. So are we aborting the Rabami? And we're saying for some reason there are two brothers, Bezin chap one of them, and there's different shatim of why they would have chap one of them. The Shas suggests maybe the older brother, the Bezin chap, or maybe one brother skipped out and he's not around. So the guy who was remaining got stuck holding the bag. They chapped him. Whatever the case is, he was chapped. He was forced to take on the responsibility of supporting her. And even if there's no minor, the fact that he was gechapped and he was forced to support her, that's enough that now he should be able to be made for a Nedarim. That's what I'm learning. And we're abandoning what Rabami said. There are those who say no. We're saying there was mimer. This guy did mimer, and that's why he was the one who was forced by Bezdin to support her. So there is a shayla to be showing him if we're abandoning this the thing of mimer or not. We're still going to see. Rabbi Kiva says, I don't care if there's mimer. I don't care if there's no mimer. There's nothing happening here. There's no hafara possible. But in understanding of Eliezer, we still have there's a shayla to be showing him if Shem Rabbi Eliezer is the mimer plus that he was forced to support her, or maybe just the fact that he was forced to support her without the mimer will allow him to be maver. So let's see what the Ran says. They forced this Yavom, one of these two brothers, to support her. If he was Omed Bedin and then he ran away, then we force him to support her. Rabbi Lezer holds the whole Shechai b'mzoyneseha Yofer keditnan le'il. We learned earlier in the Mishnah that there's a sheet in the Mishnah that holds that if you're Chai b'mzoyneseha, even before the Nesuin, you could make a hafara. Now, if you remember, that's Rabbi Lezer sheet here. Rabbi Yeshua argues, but the problem is v'chitema tenich Rabbi Lezer. This concept that if you're supporting this woman, you could be made for her Nedarim, that fits in like Rabbi Eliezer in the previous Mishnah. But the Rabbi Yeshua, ma'ikal meimer. How are you going to understand that according to Rabbi Yeshua? Even if the Rabbi Yeshua holds by one Yavom, you're going to have a forah. But Rabbi Yeshua doesn't hold to this. The Rabbanon, we learned yesterday that the Rabbanon argue, and they hold no, until she's actually a Nesua, it doesn't matter if he's supporting her. He actually have to make Nesuin in order for him to be able to be made for her Nedarim. So that's what we learned in the Mishnah Babaygu to Leo Svirlu, Avagab the Mafarnis law, even though he's supporting her, ain't talking about Nedarim. Now, the thing is, Ustam Rabbanon, the Peligal of Rabbi Yeshua. Let's go back to that Mishnah that we're referring to. We're referring to the Mishnah 9 Gimel Amid Beis. It doesn't quote who's arguing on Rabbi Eliezer. It's just saying there is a Chachamim who hold that until she's in the Suah, there's no Havar Nedarim. It doesn't matter about Mezainis. The Ran's telling us normally who argues on Rabbi Eliezer is Rabbi Yeshua. So the Ran wants to assume that this is Rabbi Yeshua. If this is Rabbi Yeshua, if Rabbi Yeshua holds until she's actually in the Suah, he can't be made for Nedarim. Well, then how are we going to understand Rabbi Yeshua over here, who says that if there's only one Yavam, he can be made for? And the case is where he was forced by Bezdin to support her. Support doesn't mean anything. She has to be an actual Nesua in order for the husband to be able to be made for. So in my time in Rabbi Yeshua, the Amar B'Yavim Echad Yafer. So very simple. The Gemara only ran into this trouble needing an Eitzah with the Naimer to explain Rabbi Eliezer because there were two Yavam involved. But before we even got into this mess, Rabbi Yeshua said, I hold Yeshika, that's good enough. Even without Maimer, that's enough to allow the husband to be made for. Right? We even said Yeshika and Zika's Knesuadam. We even said, right? The Ram told us that the Zika is even stronger than an Arusa. It makes you almost into a Nesua. So that's one shot you could say to Rabbi Yeshua. Inami, maybe Rabban the Pliga de Belazar Mercedes in the Berg is Lavani Rabbi Yeshua. Maybe it's not Rabbi Yeshua. And Rabbi Yeshua also agrees that the fact that he's supporting her is enough to be mechayiv him to the fact that he's supporting is enough to give him the right to be able to be made for her Nedarim on her own. Okay, so let's go weiter. So now we've arrived at a new place. We know that Rabbi Kiva holds never ever can a Shomeres Yavom be made for Nedarim of the Yavama. It doesn't make a difference. There's Maimer, Mezonis, nothing works. And like we said earlier, because at the end of the day, there's no skila. There's no skila. There's only skila by a real Arusa. By any Shomeres Yavom, there's no skila. So that's not strong enough of a relationship to be mechai, to allow the husband to do that for her. Then there was Rabbi Yeshua, who at this point in the Gemara were saying either because of Yesh Zika, even without Maimer, that creates enough of a bilus that he could be made for her Nedarim. Like the Ram said earlier, Yesh Zika, Alima Tfeime Erison, Dave Kiknusa, Mishumhachi Yofer Yavam Luchadei. Right? There was even a tzad to say because of Yesh Zika, she's like a Nesua. And then, according to Rabbi Eliezer, where there's two Yavamim, what designated one of the Yavamim to be able to be made for, what enhanced his relationship was either they made mimer and there was Ahmed Bedin, or it was just Ahmed Bedin. He's at a point where he has to support her. Once one of the Yavamim is forced to support her, that's why he could be made for a Nedarim. So those are the three shitas that we have. Beautiful. Tanan we learned. Now we're on Ahmed Beis. Tanan we learned. Amar Rabbi Eliezer. So this is the first brisa that's going to elaborate a little bit more on this conversation that occurred between Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yeshua, and Rabbi Kiva. Amar Rabbi Eliezer, I'm going to prove to you that the relationship of a Zika of a Yibum should definitely be enough to allow him to be made for the Nedarim. Uma emisha shekana la'atzma. Madach a man made kinyan, you made kedushin on a woman. Hare who made for Nedarim, that relationship allows him to be made for Nedarim. Isha shehiknu lo'im min hashamayim. If the Rebbeinu Shalom gave him a wife, that's much stronger of a kinyan. Einay din shemay for Nedarim, which is the same kal v'chomer that we learned that he said in the Mishnah. Correct the Gemara. Rab Ami said that it's speaking b'sha'asa b'maimer, right? The b'sha'asa b'maimer kana la'atzmayu. This is not a kinyan b'dei shemayim. Rab Ami learned to speaking, at least in Rabbi Eliezer's case, she made maimer. Making the maimer is not a kinyan b'dei shemayim. He did it. So your whole kal v'chomer is gone. So after the Gemara, shekana la'atzmayu ayidei shemayim. Yeah, he made his own kedushin, but he's building upon a relationship that's Torah gave him. So the kal v'chomer still applies. Correct the Gemara, tivshoit, the boy rabba. Now that we've come to this point, we could bring a raya to a shaila that Rabba had in Mesechus Yevamos. And the shaila that he had in Mesechus Yevamos was Maimer Libei Shammai. According to Shammai, who says Maimer works, what does it accomplish? Eris and Isa or Nesuin Isa. Does it create an Eris in it or does it create a Nesuin? The shaila if it's koine kinyan gomer, whether or not you can get rid of it with a get or not. But even if it's a weak one, but what is it considered? Is it considered an erishin or an isuin? L'may nafkamina. Let's have a look at the Rab. Zokt the Heligaran tivshoit the boy Rabba l'Rav Ami. According to Rav Ami, we can be poshet Rabba Shaila. The Ukma b'sha'asa b'maimer. Rav Ami said that Rabbi Eliezer is speaking in a case where maimer was made. Tivshait, let's bring a raya to the following shaila the boy Rava. Erison Oisa, if it's Erison, then the boy Mesir l'chuppah. Then in order for her to be in a suah, she has to be given over the chuppah. Chuppah creates the Uvalav hachi lekanila loy liyarsha v'loy l'tamala. So this is the litmus test. What's a nesuah? A nesuah is a woman who, if she dies, the husband yarshins her nechasim, and her nechasim don't go to her family. Or the tamala, if her husband's a kohen and she dies, can her husband become tamei to bury her? If she's a nesuah, he could be mitama to her. If she's only a narusa, he can't be mitama for her. So the question would be: a kohen made mimer on his brother's almana, and now the almana dies. Can he be mitama to her or not? Or nesuah, or maybe it's nesuah. The imba eleha. So if Maimer makes Nesuin, so she's already a Nesua. It's a regular Maisa Kedushin on the woman of Yavama. Why? Because it's built on Azika. So it takes you further than what a regular Kedushin would do.
But Yibum doesn't need the line.
But
it makes it stronger. Whereas if there's two of them, it's this one.
We're probing what it does. That's exactly what we're probing, what it could do. But look at this Lashon Haran. If you held it was Erison Isa, if you hold Maimer makes Erison and not Nesuin, then if he was Ba'ala, she's still not a Nesua, because Nesuin is not Bia. Nesuin is one of those 5 things that we discussed that I don't remember what they all are. Chuppah, Yichud, right? So the Bia would not make her into a Nesua. I'm sorry? No, Ayavuma.
This is the.
That's right. But once he's Ma'aris a woman, he can't be kind to her anymore the way a regular Yavam would be kind to her because he made Maimer. Now she's an Arusa. So he messed it up. He broke the rules of Yibam. So I just do nice. I just do nice. Then ball level of Chubba Kanal Yoshel Kamla. So Tivshat Merabami. Now we can bring a Gabalta Uriah from Rabami to Nesu Noisa. Why? The Amar Rabbi Lazar Yafer. What does Yafer mean? The husband could be made for on his own without any help. So it must be if Rabami learned this thing we made Maimer, and that's why Rabbi Eliezer held that this Yavam could be made for her. How did Rabbi Eliezer express the halacha that the husband could be made for? Yafer. Because Alkadaidach the Mefer Luchudei below Shuttas. So that because Alkadaidach the Gemara is that it's Kenesuin, and therefore the husband alone could be made for, he doesn't even need a father. So you have a raya from here that Maimer Nisuin Oiseh. Zog to Gemara, no, you don't have a raya. Why? Tivshat in the Sun Oiseh, the Erison Oiseh, if it only makes an Erison, Hatnan we learned in our Mishnah, Naira Hamurasa of the Frida Mishnah, Naira Hamurasa of the Ubaila the Frida Darel. And our Mishnah says Yofer, which is mashma that the husband could do it on his own.
That's right.
Amar Rab Nachman bar Yitzchak, my Yofer b'shutvis.
But Nara Merosa is not a view when she's not Elmon. That's Elmon.
No.
But she's the man with Erison. It had to be the man with Erison. Yeah. So at the end of the day, you don't have a raya. So maybe it's only in Arusha. And now this is what I was referring to at the beginning. It's in Arusha, the Suha. So now the Gemara said the Maskana, it was in Arusha. Tani Nami Hochi. So now, first we had a kasha on Rab Ami, and the Gemara answered it. Right, the kasha we had in Rab Ami is it's not Kanalatzmoy. So the Gemara said, now we're going to end up bringing a right to Rab Ami from a Brisa. So I think I was mistaken.
Can you go back? I'm sorry. Can you go back to explain the Kavachimer of what Shemayim did? I don't like when you get Shemayim involved in what's going on earth. It's not a fair invocation. I don't know if that's the right word of the law. What happened from Shemayim? How were they maknever?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Word it right, Akib. Say it right way.
Sorry, you weren't able to hear me. I don't want to understand what that means. What's the Kabbalah? Madach, a woman that was maknev from Shemayim.
No, Madich, if I create my own relationship with a woman, I could be made for an Nedarim. If Hashem gave me a relationship with this woman, surely I should be able to be made for an Nedarim, because the relationship that Hashem gave me is surely stronger than the relationship that I created for myself.
So Hafaras Nedarim is a litmus test of how the relationship was
Strength
established.
of the relationship. That's right.
Okay, I'm going to reserve. I'll come back after Shir on that. I don't understand how.
Okay, well, we're going to be learning now the brisa that elaborates on it a little bit more. So
Okay.
let's learn the next brisa because it reviews.
I know it's coming. You can't
It's a
take
different
that sitting down.
format.
You can't take that sitting down. The Bnei Shalom getting involved with Shem Shemayim. That's dangerous precedent.
So
Okay.
I just want to correct what I said earlier. I said earlier that we're going to have multiple brises that discuss this same conversation, but I was really wrong because the Tanan at the Talmud Omid was our Mishnah, right? It's only this Tani Namahachi where we have a brisa that's talking a little bit more about this conversation. So Tani Namahachi Kid Rabami. We're going to learn a brisa that's going to show like Rabami that's big where there's Maimer. Now, by the time we finish the brisa, we're going to forget about Rabami, and the Gemara is going to come back to remind us because the brisa takes us in an interesting direction that'll keep us occupied. And we'll have to snap back to where this has anything to do with Rabbanim. Shomeres Yavom. Ben Yavom Echad, Ben Shnei Yavomin, Rabbi Lezer and Yofer, like in our Mishnah. Rabbi Yeshua Omer, La'echad v'lo l'shnayim, only if there's only one Yavom. Rabbi Kiva Omer, Loi la'echad v'lo l'shnayim, Yavom never can be made.
One second. If should know about the Mishnah. Then when Rabbi Lezer said that which of the Yavam? Anyone?
The one that, well, no. Either the one that made Maimer, according to Rabami, or the one that made Maimer, and the Bezin forced him to start supporting her. Rabbi Lezer. So Rabbi Lezer wanted to bring her Rai. So Akiva, now we're going to have another version of Rabbi Lezer. Yeah. Uma im isha she'ein loy chelik ba at shelo taver l'shusa. Take a regular stranger, a woman who I'm going to make kedushin on. Before I made a kedushin, I had no connection to her whatsoever. Nevertheless, Mishabas Rishusai, once I make a kedushin on her, and now she's in my rishus, nigmer aloi, she's totally his, and he could be made for her nedarim. A woman who, before he made mimer on her, there was a relationship because there was a zika because she felt him to yibum, and then he went and made mimer on her. Surely she's his totally because he started already with the relationship, and now he enhanced the relationship with mimer. Surely he should be able to be made for her nedarim. That was Rabbi Eliezer's kasha. So right over here, you see clearly talking with mimer. So Isha sheyesh lechelek at shalataver l'shusay, which is referring to a woman who felt him liyibum, right? And there was a relationship. Misha bas l'shusay when she comes into his rishus, meaning he made kedushin on her. So you see clearly that Rabbi Eliezer is talking about a case where there was mimer. So this is one of the rides that the Gemara is going to tell us is how you know that Shadon Rabbi Eliezer is like Rabbi Ami said that there was mimer. Amalei Rabbi Kiva. Rabbi Kiva said, I don't like your time. You know why? If someone made a kedushin, you know why there he has so much force that he could be made for her nedarim. The same way before he married her, he had no connection to her, nobody else did, and now that he marries her, nobody else can. He doesn't have exclusive relationship with her. His brothers, who are also Yavomim, also have a chelik in her. We learned they could mess up his zika, even if he didn't mind it.
That's where Yeshua was in time.
Amar lo Rabbi Yeshua, Akiva, the Verecha b'shnei Yavomim. You have a good time in b'shnei Yavomim. Ma temeshav al Yavom echad. You got Rabbi Eliezer. I have no problem with that, but you didn't get me.
That's just the technical. You're only one brother. But if there would be two brothers,
Right.
you see that the Zika is not as
So you're asking to be a Gavaltic Kasha. How could Rabbi Yeshua say I'm scot free? He proved it very well. Because if the fact that when there's two brothers, you see Zika isn't strong enough, even by one it should be strong enough. Gavaltic. That's a Gavaltic Kasha. That's a Gavaltic. The Karen Naira asked that Kasha. That's the Karen Naira Kasha. And I'm eating my heart out that I didn't think of that Kasha because it's so potent. Rabbi Kiva showed clearly that Zika is not strong enough to give someone the right to be made for.
when there's two brothers.
Well, but that doesn't change the Zika.
When
If Zika is not good enough, that's right.
One brother.
Well, then you
But
got
the Zika
split.
itself is not as strong.
It proves the Zika doesn't work.
Because you got split.
Not going to get split. There's no such a split Zika. There's the same Zika.
You see, it's able to get.
It's able, but Lemasa now there's only one kid.
Make a difference, but Zika-
No,
I don't
yeah.
I don't see it as.
We don't.
I don't think about Kasha. The litmus test is when there's two brothers, Zika doesn't work. So just because you don't have a second brother, Zika doesn't work. That's Mamash the Karen Noise Kasha.
Right, but when I'm one son, the ganze Yiddish give it to me. That's it. Everything belongs to
There's
me.
a technical difference.
No, because that.
Well,
But it's
Okay,
not
but
technical.
But I'm happy you asked it because that means we understand what's going on over here. You know the stuff. Obviously, the other Rishonim didn't learn like this. So obviously, the other Rishonim are holding like they're learning that the Zika is different if it's two brothers and one brother. Could be. So when you could now you could open up a yeshiva. You already have a Rosh Yeshiva here. You're ready to go. Bishmak. Zog to Gemara Vayter. So Amar Loi Rabbi Yeshua Akiva Devrech B'Shnei Yavamim Ma'ata Meishav Al Yavam Echad. Amar Loi Rabbi Akiva said, "Well, you think I'm only talking about two Yavamim? Klum Chalaknu Al Yavam Echad Al Shnei Yavamim. Vein She'asa B'Maimer. Vein She'lo Asa B'Maimer. It doesn't make a difference if it's Yomaimer, Nishmaimer, one Yavam, two Yavamim. There's no comparison between Maimer and Zika to a regular kedushin. Uchashar Devarim, Rabbi Kiva. Uchashar Devarim, Kain Nedarim. Just like for other halachas, I'm going to show you that there's a huge difference between a regular erison and the Maimer or the Zika, and I already spilled the beans. It's talking about if there's a Chiv Skila or not, right? And that's how David got into Shomeres Yavim. How did he get a kid, right? So we're coming back full circle. But I'll call upon him as Dr. Bakiva. There's a fundamental difference between an erison and a Maimer or a Zika, and therefore there's nothing to talk about. It doesn't matter if there's one Yavim, two Yavamim, no such thing as Afara for a Yavim. So Rabbi Kiva, that's such a good question. He had such a good, he had a stark taina. And you don't see that Rabbi Yeshua or Rabbi Eliezer came back with a comeback, right?
At least in the.
Rabbi Kiva got the last word here. So Ben Azai said, wow, what a shame, Ben Azai. Rabbi Kiva. You never looked at Rabbi Kiva. If you would have gotten into brisk, you would have gotten such a good shidduch. And now you didn't get into brisk, you blamed the Ben Azai. You never got married because you didn't get into Rabbi Kiva.
He married Rabbi Akiva's daughter.
He got
He
the
did?
Kiva done, but
Oh,
He
yeah,
did.
yeah,
Ben
yeah.
Azai married him for
I thought Ben Azai
7
was
days.
secular.
he
But he was so blown away by Rabbi Kiva's Torah that he said, wow, I can't believe I didn't go to yeshiva. I remember when I was in Philadelphia yeshiva, so Bacham would go during Seder to speak to Rosh Yeshiva in learning, right? So Laser Wyman once went up to Rebellion, he asked him a shayla, and Rebellion told him a teretz. But the whole Bishop says, wow, the Rosh Yeshiva is a zaguin in Mishra and a cipher. Ichalas Ostulin. It was gewaldig. It was such a classic Laser moment. The Rosh Yeshiva is a zaguin in Mishra and a cipher. Zok Gemara weiter. My Tanya Kavose the Ravami. Tanya Kavose the Ravami. So now the Gemara wants to know, you said that this is a right to Ravami from this brisa. Where do you see Ravami in this brisa? Zok the Gemara, there's two places. A is Midakatoni, Ben Shasa B'Maimer, Ben Shalasa B'Maimer. Rabbi Kiva said in the Farish, I don't care if she made Maimer or not. So you see clearly that Rabbi Lazar must have held it's with Maimer, and Rabbi Kiva is disputing that as well. Inami Meresha, which I already pointed out, the Katoni, Mishanichas Rishusoi, Nigmaraloi. So you see, after there was a relationship of Zika, and then the Brasha discusses Nichas Rishusoi over and above the Zika, meaning there must have been a Maimer. V'hidloi Kaddish, if he didn't make a Maimer, if he didn't make a Kedushin on this Yavama, my Nigmaraloi. So Tiv Shoit Minei, Kishavasa B'Maimer. So that's how you see from this brisa, in fact, that Rabbi Eliezer holds that when there's two Yavamin, one Yavam could be made for only if there was Maimer, but the Gemara says, in addition to the Maimer, they also have to mandate that he support her, right? Now the Gemara wants to know, Mai Ukishar Devarim Ken Yadarim. What did Rabbi Kiva meant when he said that I'll prove to you from other things that the Yibum, the Maimer, the Kedushin of a Yavama is not like a regular Erison, the Katani that we learned in the Brisa about what Rabbi Kiva said. Don't you agree to me? She'ein chayav and skila k'nair hamaraso. A nair hamaraso is mizanig at skila, but a naira who's a Shomeres Yavom, even if she had maimer, she will not get skila. Amar Vashi masnisa nami deka. You also have a raya from our Mishnah that the Mishnah itself also is referring to this distinction between an arusa where the naira would be chay skila versus a Shomeres Yavom where there won't be skila. Because what does it say? Ein Yavama Gemura Leisha, Kishem Sharusa Gemura Leisha. Right? That's what our Mishnah, that's what Rabbi Kiva said in the Mishnah. Ein Hayavama Gemura Le'Yavim, Kishem Sharusa Gemura Leisha. She's not as konui to her husband as an Arusa is, and that's telling us the Misnisa Namideka, the Mechiv Skila Kamai Siraya, Kishem Sharusa Gemura Leisha, the Arusa Beskila Imzinsa. So Baruch Hashem, we finished the sugya. Now I always love the Ran's Uleinian halacha. Uleinian halacha zok the Ran kaimalon Rabbi Kiva. We pass away Rabbi Kiva. The einay mefer lo laachad v'lo l'shnayim. A yavama could never have a farah from her husband, even if there's maimer. Why? The avgav the kaimalon yezika. Even though we pass yezika, uleil perishna taima de Rabbi Kiva. We should desvir ein zika. And earlier, an Amar Aleph, we explained that the shita of Rabbi Kiva is because of Ein Zika, and if we hold Yesh Zika, so shouldn't that say that we don't pass like Rabbi Kiva? Zaktaran Ikal Meimer Hanamili Nikamida Aisi La Hach Brisa. Until we learned this Brisa, we falsely thought that the Shaila was of Yesh Zika or Ein Zika. But both of the Aisi Law, now that we have this Brisa, we know the real pshat. Chazina that Filu Sfirla Rabbi Kiva Yesh Zika, even if Rabbi Kiva would hold Yesh Zika, he would still hold that the Zika or the Maimer wouldn't be enough to give the husband the right to be made for him. Why? Ultimately, that chi of skila is his litmus test. And now, the chiv in the cult of Ben Azai Rabbi Kiva, since Ben Azai complimented and exalted Rabbi Kiva, v'zechinu, and he clearly said that Rabbi Kiva won this argument. The Rabbi Lezer, Rabbi Yeshua, right, and Rabbi Nazir clearly viewed it that Rabbi Kiva triumphed over Rabbi Lezer, Rabbi Yeshua, v'dina, and then midi, because you don't see they answered back. So basically, Rabbi Kiva stumped them. He had a good time, and they didn't have a comeback. So therefore, Naktin and Kavasei, passing like him, the Chem Pasuk are about.
Usually it's haluchas.
Right. Now the Ran just has a shaila, and the shaila the Ran does have is, I understand without a doubt that if the Nedarim pre-existed even the first marriage, or came during the first marriage, there Zok the Ran, I understand that the father would be mefer on his own. Now that the Oris died, the father would be mefer on his own. But what happens if after the first husband died, he made Nedarim, she made Nedarim now, while she was still a Shomeres Yavom? Would the father be able to be made for those Nedarim on his own or not?
After the.
If she made new Nedarim after her first husband, if she made Nedarim while her husband was alive,
After the
no, the Yavom's alive, but so if she made Nedarim while her first husband was alive, we learned Nisrek Nala'av. Once the husband dies, the father can be made. But what happens if she made Nedarim but in front of the Shomeres Yavom? What would be the halacha?
And they can't do anything.
So the Ran doesn't know. So Zok the Ran at the last line of me, but the Nedarim Shenodir b'Shus Yavom Akatim Esafli there. I'm not sure about. But I love what he says. What you do Allah Lamaisa? Well, in Yemaisa, Tzarachin Uvadika V'Divrei Rishonim Zal. You got to check up the Rishonim. Ran, you are the Rishonim. So I'm not sure. So if the Rav told me to look in the Rishonim, the lifeguard told me to go find a lifeguard. Find someone who knows how to swim. Okay, Gavalti. Okay, good to
Yosy, just
Yes.
who's chayev in a Shomeres Yavom's mezainis? Who's chayev? Because
Nobody until Bezin forces someone to be.
I see. So, okay, so this guy, Levi, the single guy, you want to entrust him with the responsibility of being mefer her neder. He doesn't get conjugal visits. You want him to pay her credit card bills. There's no.
No, he gets conjugal visits. That's the whole point. We want to force him to be boiler and be
Make up your
miyabim.
mind. You got to make a decision. She's stuck without anybody.
Fish or cut bait.
That's right.
Yeah. Oh, so 1 second. So at what point are she makes a neder before he was miyabim or after? Before, right? That the whole shaila is with.
Yeah, after Yibam, after he made Yibam,
After
of course he
Yibum,
made Yibam.
he's
That's
stuck. That we know. He's got to pay the credit card bills. That's to me what made for neder means. She made a commitment to pay somebody who's paying the bill.
That's right.
So it's obviously it's before he was miyabim her. There's only Zika.
That's
You said
correct.
it's only a case
That's
of Zika, right?
Correct.
So there's a case of Zika. She's making a neder, and we want him to be able to be made for a neder. Why should he? Why does he want that achrayas? I don't understand why the Gemara.
Nobody asked his opinion. We just want to know what the law is.
Brother died. It's not his fault.
Yeah, but he hasn't taken that on yet. It's not hers. It's not him. I don't understand why there should be a havamina, that there should be a we haven't seen anywhere.
I want you to. I think you're a little biased to the name Akiva.
No, that for sure. That for sure. Okay, I don't understand what the havamina Gemara is to make him responsible when there's no mezainis, right? He's not chayv in her mezainis. It's not. She's not her father.
Well, no, there is no one who holds. There's no one who holds it. It's kind of the Gemara. There's nobody who holds that he could be made for Nedarim if he's not giving her mezainis. Because the Gemara said Rabbi Eliezer only holds that the husband could be made, that the Yavam could be made for Nedarim once Bezin was mechayiv him for her mezainis. If there's no chiv mezainis, everybody agrees that you can't not be made for Nedarim. So that's very consistent with what you're saying.
Okay.
Yosy,
Thank you. Thank you very much. A good to vote.
Yosy, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Are you open there? Can I ask a question?
Avada.
So I want to go back because I didn't want to harp on the point because I don't do that. But I want to harp on my first point, and I want to bring a raya. to the case of the Simplon and the case of the Simplon. What's the because of the fact that a woman may be found to have a Simplon, that's why you can't have her even after well, it's a question whether she can eat truma even after 12 months. That's the question. And what's the reason? Because
Only after 12 months, for sure.
Right.
Before 12 months, you cannot.
Right. So, but what's the question? Since Lamaisa, if there could come a situation where he's actually not going to marry her, so therefore his rights aren't really rights.
That's not what it is. There could come a situation where it's a glory muslim of Freya that the kedushin was a mekach tos.
Okay,
and she was never his wife, so she's not allowed to be.
Okay, I don't know if what you're saying is much different than what I'm saying, but what I want to hit back at is
there's a huge difference because midairaisa, if someone's mekadosh a lady, she could already eat truma, even if he's no nesuin, even if he's not supporting her, nothing. The moment he said I read mekadosh li, even though she's living at home by her father, midairaisa, she can eat truma because she's kinyan kasper. The only reason why we don't let her eat truma is because of xeris.
I'm trying to fit. I don't know if maybe what you're saying is answering me. I'm trying to say that the fact that he could do chalitza at any point that he wants means that the connection, whatever it is, mishamayim, this, that, but it's not a strong enough connection because since Igloi Milslam Afreya, if he did chalitza, that he was never married to her, so how could it be mixed?
That's not correct. There was a zika until the point of chalitza, and the chalitza severs it. Why are you saying that a chalitza retroactively severs the zika?
Because I know he's not married to her.
Well, let me tell you something. What if a woman who's a Shomeres Yavom is mezana, and then the Yavom makes chalitza? She still gets a malchus because at the time that she was mezana, she was a Shomeres Yavom.
I forgot the rule. What if she was a zika to him? What happens to her relatives and his relatives afterwards? They could get married or they can't get married. If he did chalitza, is he allowed to marry her relatives after that?
No.
He's never allowed to marry her relatives?
No.
I mean, so you see there's some power that lasts.
That's a good point. That's right. You didn't think of that.
That there's some power that lasts. Okay. The other thing I wanted to say is I can't remember where, and I don't have a Gemara with me where I am tonight right now, so I couldn't look back. But we mentioned the Yavama in the last 2 days in some Mishnah. Did you refer back to it? Did Ron refer back to that? Do you remember what I'm referring to? There was 2 or 3 examples, and one of the examples was the Yavama.
We had it right over here. We had it right on the Ein Gimel Lamed Beis. We had it. Higiyud Beis Chodesh Echel Shlo V'Chel Shuma. Aval Yovim Einei Meichel B'Truma. Yovim is never Meichel B'Truma.
Right. So, okay. Thank you for reminding me where it was. So, doesn't that have some influence on today's Gemara? If it says, why
What does
not?
Achilas Truma have to do with Havaris and Zorim?
Well, we sure spent the last lot before this trying to make that
The
connection.
Gemara concluded that there's no connection. The Gemara thought there might be a connection, and the Gemara concluded that there's absolutely no connection at all.
So that's why that Gemara, Aval Yavam in Michael Betruma. Where was that again? Point to me where the spot was. Aval Yavam in Michael Betruma. So you're saying that has no shaykhs. I see it. You're saying that has no shaykhs to our Gemara.
I don't think so.
Because we said there's the Nedarim and
The Yavam is in the Michael B'Truma because of a deraisa. The pasuk says Kinyan Kasboy, and this Yavam is not Kinyan Kasboy. It's Isha Shehiknu La'imin Hashemayim. So there's a deraisa. It's midaraisa, not Michael B'Truma. A Yavam is midaraisa, not Michael B'Truma.
Oh, I know. Now I'm beginning to remember my question mark. So, but go by. There were 2 in the Mishnah. There were 2 kavachimers. I mean, 2 different ways of looking at it. And in one of those ways of looking at it, the Yavama was stronger.
Because it's Isha Shehiknu La'imin Hashemayim.
So therefore,
That was Rabbi Eliezer's perspective. And the
Okay,
Lezer
so
said
now
that
let's
surely,
pull that back
uh,
here.
Okay,
Let's
where
pull
to?
that back here. And let's think for a second. I don't know if I'm making any sense, but let's pull it back here and say that, what is that? What did we say again over here? We said, what was the words we said again? I lost the place again. Where was that point? I'm sorry. Can you point
You
again
looking
where
for
it was?
Kalvachimer?
Yeah, back to yesterday's Gemara. Back to yesterday's Gemara. With the one about the Yavom. Ava Yavom ein machal b'truma. Is that affected by either of today's svaras?
I don't know why it would be.
One svara says that Yavam is stronger connected to her. So according to the svara that a Yavam is stronger connected to her, shouldn't he be
But
able
there's
to
yeah, but this is all Xeris Akosa. It says Kinyan Kaspai. It might be a very strong Kinyan, but it's not Kinyan Kaspai.
I mean, because we have exeris.
The
Okay.
Ran brings down over here the Kinyan Kaspai Amar Rachmana, the high Kinyan the Achad.
Right. All right. Okay.
I didn't say it accurately. I said this is not Kinyan Kesef. I said it's a Kinyan that the Torah gave him, but that's not what the Ran says. The Ran says it's not his Kinyan Kesef, it's his brother's Kinyan Kesef.
Right. Okay, my last question. I don't know if I'm right, and that's why I didn't say it during your share. But am I not correct?
I say many things during my share that I'm not sure if I'm right about.
Well, you don't have a choice. I could keep quiet. Just remind me if what I'm saying is not correct. That B'nai Noach, when they do a love, they could get killed for it.
I believe that's true. I believe the for Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, every violation is a Chiv Misa.
Right. So wouldn't that answer Dave's question?
Yeah, I suggested that.
Oh, I didn't hear. I didn't hear you
suggested
saying.
that.
Okay. I mean, that's what I would say is the answer to the question in 1 second.
Yeah, but see, what David was asking, how could it be that for us it's for us it's just a lav and just a malchus, and for Tamar it was Misa. The lump is because she's a Benoach. But
I mean that would be we have a swear that a yid doesn't get punished worse for something than a b'nei noach. By Pashtus, any b'nei noach that did anything wrong, if they did gezel, for instance, they get misa, and we don't get misa.
That's right.
So, I don't know what
you said something. I'm not sure if it's accurate. You said, is it possible anything that a yid gets a lineage for the guy? It's not possible. The guy should have a more severe lineage.
we have some Gemara like that.
That's what I heard. I remember learning there cannot be anything that's mutter for a yid that's also for a guy. But I don't remember learning specifically about the severity of the lineage.
Maybe
I'm
okay.
not sure. I know for sure the Gemara says it's impossible that something should be mutter for a yid and also for a guy.
Okay, I take it back. I take it back because I just remember the concept. I didn't remember the what the details were. Okay. Shkoyach.
Okay, I get the vach.
Yevach.